Hello, I'm Brigantia, Blackbird of Blackbird's Brew. Happy Friday, and welcome to Romance in Modern Mythology, Spooky Couples Edition. This week we're going to be looking at Frankenstein's creature and the Bride of Frankenstein. And for this, I rewatched the 1931 Frankenstein and the 1935 Bride of Frankenstein. The creature was played by Boris Karloff, and the bride was played by Elsa Lanchester. So, I've always felt really sorry for Frankenstein's creature just in general. I always felt that his story was essentially one of tragedy, in which he was the unwilling plaything of fate. Now, Dr. Frankenstein, he was a man who was absolutely obsessed. I mean, he was brilliant, but he was ethically unparticular. He had a desire to create life from reanimating a stitched-together corpse, and this was all rooted in a desire for vindication of his theories and supremacy of his intellect, and to just have that rush of power of, look what I did, wah-ha-ha. He is the quintessential mad scientist. Now, after he had a successful experiment and the creature was starting to show some signs of life, one of the things he said was, "Now I know what it's like to be God." And that shows you the kind of power obsession. You know, he wasn't someone who was political, who necessarily wanted to remake the world. He just wanted to claim the power to be able to. He wanted to say, I can create life just like God can. I mean, any way you look at it, that's an extremely arrogant thing. And of course, arrogance was the ongoing fatal flaw of this particular doctor. Now, for the creature himself, his upbringing was rough from the very start. For the first few days, he was just kept completely in the dark, more or less on his own. And when he was finally exposed to light, he actually reached out to try and touch it. There was something that was very moving about that. He was trying to reach out for it, and then that light was taken away. Then things started to go wrong when Fritz, who was the assistant, he burst into the room with a flaming torch. Now, the flames of the fire really startled and frightened the creature, and one thing led to another, and if the creature was chained, and then Fritz took it upon himself to just take a whip and start beating on the creature, and then he taunted him with the torch once Dr. Frankenstein took the whip away. It was just awful. In the end, the creature killed him, and to be honest, my sympathies were entirely with the creature. But this incident convinced Dr. Frankenstein and his teacher, Dr. Waldman, who had been assisting him, that it was necessary to destroy the creature. Now, after all this, Dr. Frankenstein, he's just exhausted, he collapses, and Dr. Waldman promises that he's going to undertake the deconstruction procedure. So that's what they all decided to do. But before the surgery could begin, the sedative that was given to the creature wore off, and killed Dr. Waldman, and he got away from the laboratory. During this time, Dr. Frankenstein has been recovering his strength, and he's busy with wedding preparations, while the creature is left to his own devices and misadventures. This is when the creature encounters a little girl named Maria. You know, she meets him, she has her flowers, and, want to play with me, and her little game is to toss the flower blossoms on the water to see how they float. She gives the creature some flowers to throw in, which he does, but when he runs out of flowers, he's looking for something to throw in next, and then he tosses the little girl in the water. She can't swim, she drowns. The creature doesn't understand why she doesn't float or why she's hurt. Pardon me. He's very distressed by this, understandably, and he runs away. He doesn't understand how anything works. No one has taught him anything. Now we come to the wedding crashing. Elizabeth, who is Dr. Frankenstein's fiancée, she has this premonition that something's going to happen before the wedding. And indeed, shortly after Dr. Frankenstein is informed of his mentor's death, the creature finds an open window and frightens Elizabeth to the point of extreme shock. Dr. Frankenstein resolves to find the creature, destroy him, and he leaves Elizabeth in the care of his best friend. He was to look after her, and to continue to do so up to and including marrying Elizabeth himself if Dr. Frankenstein should have to be killed. Yeah, interesting stuff. Now next, when little Maria's father comes into town, he's carrying his deceased daughter to report her murder. And it's determined that the creature was the one who was responsible for her death, and the villagers form 3 search parties, and Dr. Frankenstein is leading one of them. The creature is found. He has this stare down with his creator before he drags Dr. Frankenstein off to a windmill. The villagers unsuccessfully try to break the door down while Dr. Frankenstein goes to pretty dangerous lengths to try to escape the creature before the creature loses patience and tosses Dr. Frankenstein from the balcony. After this, the villagers torch the windmill and the creature is believed to be destroyed. Of course, he wasn't. They didn't realize that at the time. Now, the creature, he ends up falling down into some water, which is what enables him to survive the torturing of the windmill. And while the windmill's been burning, little Maria's parents, they've been lingering around. They wanted to make sure he was dead, especially her father. He said he wanted to see his blackened bones. But unfortunately, he encounters the still living creature instead, kills him. The creature then encounters the wife, kills her, and it just so happens that the town gossip witnesses this event and the fact that the creature's still alive and that he's going off to wander the countryside. Now, the gossip promptly reports this, as she should, but no one believes her. They saw the windmill burn, couldn't possibly survive that, so she's just said, well, wash my hands of this. Now, in the meantime, Dr. Frankenstein has become Baron Frankenstein, and at this point he has recovered enough from his injuries to reschedule the wedding, and he and Elizabeth have been discussing their plans to just go away, get away from everything for a little while. Frankenstein at this point is still tantalized by his wild dream, and Elizabeth is doing her best to dissuade him, and you can't help but feel some sympathy from the woman because you can tell that Dr. Frankenstein is not a man who's going to learn his lesson the first time. Then you have a former colleague, Dr. Pretorius. He comes a-calling, and he decides to persuade Dr. Frankenstein to take up his work again and work together as partners. This is where he really stirs the pot. Dr. Pretorius, has carried on with similar experience, and he has enjoyed some success, but all the creatures he created are miniature size. He created them from cultures. So Dr. Pretorius decides that what he has yet to discover or doesn't understand quite yet, perhaps Frankenstein will be able to help him with, or at least know where to do it. He's looking for greater size for the creations for a start. So Pretorius suggests that Frankenstein creates an Eve that can be paired off with the original creature, and perhaps they will even breed and create a new race. No small thing here. They're essentially wanting to do the whole Garden of Eden thing inside of a laboratory. Now, unaware of this plotting and scheming, the creature has been very much on his own, and he's been having quite a few traumatic experiences. First, he meets a shepherdess. She's scared, of course, and she screams, and she won't stop screaming. He puts his hand over his mouth, and just as you think he's about to suffocate her to stop the screams, 2 hunters come along, and they shoot at the creature, scare him away. The hunters then alert the burgomaster, who's kind of like the mayor, and then they rally the townsfolk. So the creature is cornered, restrained, and carried off to the town's jail, which doesn't last, of course. The creature makes a run for it, and he severely injures a couple in the village along the way. Next, the creature meets a traveling family camped out in the woods. He frightens them and gets scared away by the father with a torch. And finally, he meets someone who he doesn't have this immediate, horrific experience with. When he hears this violin music playing off in the distance, he's drawn to it, he follows it, and come to find out it's being played by a blind old man. He lives alone in a small little cottage, and the old man realizes someone's around. He invites the creature inside, has no idea who he is or anything that he's done, and the old man shows the creature kindness, the first kindness the creature has ever known. The old man provides him with shelter, food, a place to rest that night, and he encourages the creature to rest in comfort, actually prays, thanking his God for bringing him a companion. And the old man was lonely. He was grateful of the company. And honestly, he was the first person who was ever glad to have the creature around at all. And the creature starts realizing that there are other emotions than, the fear, the panic, the hate, the trauma, everything that up to this point has defined his existence. He's seen that there is something else. Now, during his time with the old man teaches the creature how to speak and, a few very basic social skills. And amazingly, he's even able to give the creature another view of fire, showing him that fire isn't always a scary thing that's going to hurt you. Ugh, sorry. Working on getting past this lingering allergy cough. Almost there. Let's go on. So during this time, the creature is learning the value of friendship and companionship, and he realizes how painful his isolation was, and that his isolation was one of the sources of that pain. So all's well. In fact, you almost kind of wish that his little idyll with the old man in the cottage could just carry on until he's a little bit more whole, but that was not to be. There are two hunters that stop in the cottage. They're asking for directions. They see the creature. They attack. They told the old man he's been harboring a monster. They drag the old man away, set his cottage on fire, because, that's a nice thing to do to the blind people. And once again, the creature's all alone. He doesn't understand, not really what happened, why happened. All he knows is that his friend was taken away, and living people hurt him over and over and over again. And he's hurting all the more so. I mean, he was alone before, but now he's had some precious time with a very kind-hearted friend, and it was just taken away without any warning. Frustrated with the living, the creature finds his way to the graveyard. He's just in pain. He's breaking headstones, generally creating a ruckus. And through all of this destruction, he accidentally discovers a hidden doorway, and that leads him to underground tunnels, kind of catacombs. And it's in this place that he meets Dr. Pretorius. Dr. Pretorius is determined for the experiments to move forward, and he's hired some henchmen to help him collect parts from graves. And when he encounters the creatures, he's just absolutely delighted with this good fortune. This is Christmas. It could not work out any better if he had planned it. Now, the creature is desperate for company. He's glad of the attention, and he starts working in cooperation with Dr. Pretorius, even while he doesn't fully understand, this doctor's motivations or his ultimate purpose. The doctor also dangles in front of him the possibility of having a woman friend, and the creature's just delighted by this. Women are good, friends are good, and then it's like part of his brain is remembering the word wife. Frankenstein wants a wife. He wants that kind of more permanent companionship. And Dr. Pretorius is giving him this idea of, oh yeah, we can make you a wife, and it's just going to be great, and she'll be just like you. So you can tell that the creature now has it in his head that if he is just able to be in company with someone who's like him, someone who was reanimated, well, maybe that person won't be frightened of him, that person will love him. It'll be a different experience than what he keeps having with the living. He thinks it's the solution to his pain. And the good doctor does everything possible to further convince him of this. Now, Dr. Pretorius' interest in the creature is twofold. For one, he's a necessary component of this larger experiment. And for two, he realizes that the creature could make himself very useful in persuading Frankenstein to follow through with the experiments. Now, Frankenstein and Elizabeth, by this point, have finally tied the knot, and they're about to leave for their honeymoon. Neither one of them wants to deal with Dr. Pretorius. Then enters the creature. Frankenstein is horrified. He refuses to even consider the notion of making a female companion for the creature. And Dr. Pretorius, sends the creature away. And then, on his own, the creature decides to kidnap Elizabeth for leverage. Dr. Pretorius realizes what has happened and why. He takes charge, and he insists that no one in the household or the village or the local authorities goes after the creature for the sake of Elizabeth's safety. Dr. Frankenstein is absolutely backed into a corner, and he decides he has no choice but to cooperate and agrees to finish the work. Now, at length, the work is completed, and the bride at long last has been animated, and she's beginning to investigate her surroundings. You can tell that she's confused. She's having a hard time realizing where she is, what's going on, why anything is. You know, it's kind of a big thing, being reanimated from the dead. Now, as she's exploring, the creature sees the bride, and he's just, you can tell, it's love at first sight for him. He thinks, there she is, I won't be alone anymore, this is going to be great. So he starts to approach her, and her first reaction is to scream. And then she looks to Dr. Frankenstein to help. Dr. Pretorius is trying to calm the creature and keep him away from her, but the creature immediately goes to where Dr. Frankenstein had, sat the bride down. He sits next to her and holds her hand. You can tell that he really likes her, and he's trying to get her used to him so she won't be afraid. But the bride really hates him. She screams, she runs away again. This arranged marriage is not working out. It's just not going to work. The creature realizes this, that, she's rejected him just like all the living had. He's enraged, he's deeply depressed, and he concludes that the dead need to remain dead. He flips a lever, it makes the laboratory explode. This kills Dr. Pretorius, the bride, and we're led to believe the creature himself as well. But of course the movies go on, and there's no killing the Frankenstein monster. But that's where it ends between the creature and the bride. Absolute tragedy. And the strong message of the whole film is that you can't just create someone who has an obligation to love you, no matter how alienated you may feel. You can't force matters of the heart. You can't just stitch something together and call it good enough and think that it's going to work out well. And I think this is actually a pretty useful lesson for anyone who practices magic, because sometimes there's temptation of, I can just use my capabilities and I can make everything exactly the way I want it all the time, including in relationships, and that is not reality. That's not how it works. We can't Frankenstein our way into making outcomes that go against the natural flow of things. So, that is the poor Frankenstein creature and the bride. Feel awfully sorry for them. I really don't feel sorry for Dr. Frankenstein at all. He's the source of a great deal of pain. I have a lot of sympathy for his wife. She took on a hell of a chore. But yeah, thus ends this week's Poor Spooky Couple. Now next week we're going to be looking at the Wolfman, and he had through his movies several different women that he had either relationships with or attractions to. So we're going to be taking a closer look at that, the man who had the beast within. So hopefully you'll come back for that, but for now I will see you in another video. Bye.